The elderly Assyrian couple is believed to have been abducted from their village in southeastern Turkey in January of 2020. The remains of Şimoni Diril were discovered in March of 2020 during a civilian-led search. However, no results of any investigation conducted thereafter have been made public. Hurmuz Diril's fate and whereabouts remain unknown. Their disappearance remains a case of mystery and heartbreak. Family members have the right to truth and justice. Here to speak more on their fight for justice is Hurmuz and Şimoni's son, Bedri Diril.
Thank you, Api, for having me here. Before I talk about my parents' case, I want to give some information about our eastern part of the region we called Botan and Hakkari. You can see there is 4 villages there, try to struggle and try to rebuild. The people who returned, they try to rebuild their 4 village. The red one is my hometown. Now it's very hard to, I cannot say we tried to rebuild, but somehow we failed. So may you know, only 13 and 14 of hundreds of villages to the east side of the Tigris River survived the Assyrian genocide in 1915. These last remaining villages were evacuated at the end of the 20th century due to the clash between the Turkish armed forces and PKK. Assyrian livings in these villages mostly migrated to France, Belgium, and Germany. However, since the beginning of the 2000s, although conditions were not easy, a few of these evacuated villages began to return to Geznach, Hassana, Herbol, and Mer. This peace process, initiated by the Turkish state between 2013 and 15, gave the region peace and security for couple years. There was hope for some Assyrians who wanted to make a comeback. But this hope didn't last long because the peace process was inclusive and the atmosphere of peace and security gave way to the conflict process. Those who wanted to return were not able to return. And those who have returned on a permanent basis faces many difficulties. Nearly 40 years of conflicts and pressure in the region have prevented rebuilding and revival of Mer and many other villages. In addition, the personal interest and the interest of local powerful individuals in the region pose other problems. The village of Mer has been forcibly evacuated at least 4 times in the last century. The pressure and the tyranny of the Kurdish tribes and then violent clashes between the separatist Kurd and the Turkish armed forces became the reason of these evacuations. After the establishment of the Turkish Republic, the first troop that came to the region caused the death and injury of several people of Mer. They had to live in other villages for a few years and they come back again. In 1930, when one of the leaders of the Kurdish Jirki tribe was killed in Mer by another Kurdish tribe, the Mer people were forced again to evacuate the village. A few years later, they come back from the place that way. that they want. Until 1989, the pressure of the Kurds never lacking. They regarded the people Mer as a fullah, like their servants. They forced the Mer people to do some work for themselves, and some Kurdish bandits kidnapped some people and demand ransom. In 1984, thousands of villages in eastern Anatolia were evacuated due to the conflicts that broke out between the separatist Kurds, PKK, and Turkish armed forces, included those 13 and 14 villages left over from the genocide. Most of the people of Mer didn't stay in Turkey and migrated to France. However, my father, Hurmuz, returned to his evacuated village in 1992 with the 4 families, but this return did not last long. In 1994, was forcibly evacuated again. Jenny, can we just jump under picture? Yeah. So, who is Hurmuz and Şimoni Diril? Hurmuz and Şimoni were married couple since 1969, and they have 11 children. My father, Hurmuz Diril, he worked hard for his family and his hometown in very difficult conditions. Since becoming the headman, Muhtar of the Mer, in around the 18th, he had become more connected to his village and felt more responsible for it. But in addition to the economic difficulties, the village was slowly emptied due to the environmental pressure and the violent conflicts between the separatist Kurds and the Turkish armed forces in 1984. Hurmuz and 15 families wanted to stay in the village, but forcibly evacuated by the army in 1984 for security reasons. After that, most of people of Mer didn't stay in Turkey and migrated to France. Only 6 families remain in Istanbul. Returning to their ruined village in 92, Hurmuz and other 4 families rebuilt their houses and started living again. However, this return didn't last long, and 94 was evacuated again for security reasons. The houses were burned and 2 young were never heard from after they were taken in custody by the gendarmerie forces. In 2011, Hurmuz decided to return again to Mer for the second time. After seasonal visiting, he settled permanently in 2015 due to the peace process initiated by the Turkish state. However, the presence of the Hurmuz and his wife Şimoni in Mer disturbed some people and became an obstacle. During the visit to Mer, January 2020, we would learn later that my father and my mother, Hurmuz and Şimoni, were missing. We also learned later that they had been harmed by someone. Well, 2020, January 12, we learned that this return became a nightmare for my family. My brother and 2 relatives wanted to visit a village on January 12, 2020. He couldn't find my parents at home. Only eyewitness and the case and our relative told him that they were abducted by the separatist PKK members and they would come back. He stated to my brother like this: we informed gendarmerie forces and they were interested for about the first week, but we couldn't get any result. We searched certain areas by ourselves but found nothing. We didn't consider the worst case scenario. About 70 days later, my elder brother found my mother's remains near the creek. Our mother was tortured and shot in the back with a gun. It was then that we realized that we had been deceived and manipulated, especially by our neighbor. We started to search properly for our missing father, but only 2 and 3 groups came to help for a short time apart from family members. As family members, we couldn't find my father even though we searched for more than 6 months properly in 2020. We haven't from my father 2.5 years. Unfortunately, we didn't get enough support that we wanted from the authorities, neither the search, nor the investigation. A proper search wasn't made, and our relative was not well questioned. Each time, he lied and manipulated us. According to authorities, everything was done, but family member witnessed very little of it. So the case, the justice, and why it can be important for our Assyrian society. In the 1980 and the 1990s, more than 70 Assyrians were killed, and the preparators were never punished. Among them, there were children under the age of 18. At that time, our Assyrian society was weak, but the preparators and their protectors were strong. But I don't think we are that weak at the present. We have some institution, we are much more conscious and powerful. I believe that if my father Hurmuz Diril is found, if justice is done for my parents, my mother Şimoni and my father Hurmuz, those who committed this murder will no longer be comfortable, and those who are involved in such a crimes will not be as brave as they used to be. Perhaps the Assyrian living in the region will be more determined in maintaining their existence and will be more courageous in seeking their rights. Honestly, the case is very difficult and beyond our power. Unfortunately, it's very hard to seek and find justice like this case in Turkey. So I just want to ask to all of you, should this case remain private family case, or should it become a case of Assyrian society? What can our Assyrian institution do for this case? Let me tell you that some of our Assyrian, really, especially API and some our Assyrian Federation in Netherlands, our association in French, they try to help and they are observing our case. I want to thank to all of them. Well, we only look for justice and what happened to my father, and we want to bring this criminal to the court. Of course, it's not easy, and we want to we appreciate any help of any individual or any institution. So, thank you for your patience and listening.
Thank you, Bedri. I'd like to now ask you to join me in a moment of silence to honor Şimoni and Hurmuz Diril.